Welcome everyone to the 19th video of my Dark Aspect series, and the 6th episode covering the Paper Mario franchise. So far I've looked at the original, Thousand Year Door, Super, which also had to be split into parts, and Color Splash. Very recently though, a new addition to this rather fractured family has been released onto the world. A game that, regardless of how you think it plays, unabashedly embraces and expands upon the darker elements this series is known for. The Paper Mario franchise has always been unafraid to tackle mature topics you'd never expect from Nintendo's key mascot. The N64 original has our hero accused of murder. The second game outright features a gallows in the center of the hub world. And the end goal of Super Paper Mario's villain is the total obliteration of all life, including his own, by means of a world-eating, pan-dimensional genocide. While no other Mario game, paper or otherwise, goes quite that far, Color Splash continued the existential terror by introducing paint as synonymous to lifeblood, which was being sucked away by the antagonists through a straw. If that last one sounded like a horror film, that's because it was likely intended to be a parody of one, as is the case with the Origami King. Before we get to that though, let's talk about how this came to be. In the case of Color Splash, the developers realized how creepy it was for a person, or toad, to have their essence drained, providing inspiration for the opening's suspenseful direction in which a lifeless, color-sapped toad is mailed to Princess Peach. There's a scare chord akin to Psycho used for the initial Slurp Guy encounter, and for their more disturbing cousin Shunned Guy. The internal file name for these enemies referred to them as Shy Guy Exorcists, with their unnatural ability to bend backwards likely alluding to that film. I talked about this in a recent video, but inside battle, these disconcerting contortionists can only be killed with fire. As a side note, Masque Maudit, the French Nintendo of Europe name for this enemy, translates to Cursed Shy Guy. Maudit can also mean damned. This peculiar fascination with the horror genre interestingly began with Sticker Star though, as revealed in this Iwata Asks interview when discussing the murals on the walls of Drybake Stadium. These human-esque hieroglyphics are re-explored in the Origami King, depicting toads as much taller and with longer limbs than usual. These drawings are described by its designers as looking creepy and gross, but when the concept was shown off to Miyamoto, he suggested they make them even more disgusting. The Origami King has worked to further this horror concept from the very beginning, with the reveal trailer as one giant homage. Being folded into origami itself is first presented as a sort of religious cult initiation by an enlightened Princess Peach, asking Mario to crease himself and become reborn. Whether the player agrees that all toads should be silenced or outright refuses her offer, she bids Mario goodbye, speaking with broken, misaligned text that's used again for any others who have converted. Based on Nintendo of America's typical censorship of religion, I was surprised to learn that beyond the cultist undertones, worship plays a big role in the game's opening area as well. Koopa Troopa followers ask if Mario 2 is seeking Shelvation, and task him with collecting holy shells to gain access to the temple of their godlike Vellumental. It's likely just a coincidence, but the sign in front could be addressing the issue of monetary fraud, seen with real-world churches only concerned with money, with the line, "Donate, worship, donate again." There is a heavy emphasis on spending coins here after all, as seen with an auctioning peddler of a holy stone, and again with the inside museum-like tour being littered with deposit boxes. Getting back to Mario's predicament though, apparently there was always a dungeon directly under the foyer of Peach's castle, where Bowser's soldiers and now Mario himself are sent to be inducted. Shadows cast against the wall reveal his army being taken to be involuntarily creased. Bowser already partially transformed into a sad little paper wallet himself, or wet floor sign as some prefer to call it. He's shown to be dangling from the ceiling, forced to hang while watching his captured soldiers transmuting. It's an ordeal honestly reminiscent of torture within the context of this papercraft world, and that is a theme prevalent with this game's major bosses. In the same Sticker Star interview I mentioned earlier, Taro Kudo mentions that for battles, the team brainstormed ways in which you could do damage to paper, like folding it, getting it wet, and burning it. The devs really ran with this idea for the Origami King, as real-world things, introduced as helper items in the previous two games, are no longer on your side. These origami crafting supplies with personalities now act as malevolent guardians of their respective streamers. Known as the Legion of Stationery, the regions and subjects that now fall under their control are being terrorized by their specialty, with most of them harboring a fixation on body horror. The scorching sandpaper deserts boss Hole Punch, for example, is able to steal faces, leaving behind a gaping hole so no one can hear their screams. Speaking of faceless, this theatrics-obsessed guardian is an effigy made from rubber bands. The dev team knew it was creepy because one of the toads in the crowd during its fight can appropriately call it nightmare fuel. Using its binding ability, the Elastic Entertainer forces toads in the Big Show Theater to sit through a series of performances that place Mario's life in peril. In an old Western-style quick draw, Mario can even get shot if the player isn't fast enough for an instant game over. I laughed pretty hard when I saw this bit of concept art in the museum featuring Big M armed with a gun. I just like to think that this was the initial drawing pitched to Nintendo with no context. This multi-leveled show was one of my favorite parts of the game, from a brash ballet to a West Side Story homage, which ends with the bodacious Birdo lip-smacking our non-consenting hero until his eyes turn white. And Birdo's Mario Fever isn't the only sensual reference in this game either. In Sniff or Shroom City's Royal Hotel, the Master Suite houses a treasure chest by the bedside containing a rather phallic relic. So I understand that the Desert Tower is innocent on its own, but the shape of it paired with where it's found, and the fact that it's the 69th collectible, is more than enough for me to say that this had to have been intentional. Even if whatever staff member was responsible didn't intentionally sneak this joke in because they thought it was funny, someone on the team had to have made this connection and just let it slide. This giant tower is said to be modeled after a legendary king. Moving away from questionable treasures takes us back to the more serious discussion of bosses. The most dangerous of all being the king of biological fear for a paper body, Scissors. The first interaction with this boss is a display of jaw-dropping power. Much like Mario and Mega Man's brutal deaths in the Ridley reveal trailer for Smash Ultimate, when Bowser Jr. charges forward to rescue his dad, the screen flashes an intense red, and in a matter of seconds, the Koopa Kid's body is decimated, with his pieces faltering to the ground. The build-up to actually confronting Scissors pushes boundaries too. Even if you saved all of Bowser's minions from the Origami Menaces like I did, the siege doesn't cease, as a new threat soon emerges from the shadows. Expressionless cutout soldiers that come in larger-than-life variants, and chains of paper doll children. There's even a coiled hand resembling a snake, which reaches out from its dark depths to pull Mario into battle. They all look a bit disturbing, coupled with the fact that they successfully capture Bowser's minions as offerings for their master, leaving the castle's dining hall entirely empty. And what does this puppeteer do with them? While Hole Punch collecting faces is sort of macabre, with its toad victims left constrained, they're at least able to freely move around, except for the ones trapped in sarcophaguses or spiderwebs, of course. Scissors doesn't give its kidnappees this luxury, splitting them into parts to be repurposed, keeping them conscious but immobile. With the pieces of these shredded soldiers, Scissors constructs a new entity known as the Paper Mistake, utilizing the faces of these hapless minions, who are aware of what's happening but unwillingly stuck together as an art experiment. This boss fight is also the most intense in the game by far. Failing to dodge Scissors' final cut attack, or jumping into its blades, will utterly splice Mario in half. At 999 damage, it's instant death. Even without a layer of stitched faces though, the kaiju papier-mâché paper lantern baddies are a topic in and of themselves, being conditioned with an insatiable hunger for, well, paper. The first one the player can fight is a mindless, house-eating Goomba that turns its head towards the camera with dead eyes, and bits of its own self missing. The lack of free will in these ravenous beasts, and the soldiers transformed by creasing, are both great examples of that existential fear. The process turns these victims into King Ollie's puppets, as indoctrinated followers in unwavering servitude. Like the faceless toads too, they can't even scream anymore. Throughout the game, it's believed and accepted that once Bowser's followers are folded, they can't be saved. But later on, it's revealed the reason they aren't able to revert back is because, as foreshadowed in the beginning with a literal shadow, they've been binded by the last Legion of Stationery, Ollie's vicious attack dog Stapler. This boss has the most brutal defeat animation if finished off by the Thousand Arms technique, by the way. Mario grabs hold of both ends, personified as a mouth, and snaps it open. Once the fanged foe is felled, its effects are undone, like the other bosses, which theoretically gives every changed soldier back their control, right? Well, backtracking from this point reveals that folded soldiers do still exist. It's sort of a plot hole, but I suppose you could argue that Bowser was only able to revert with help, and because he was always just partially turned. Regardless, that's about all I have for this first part, but one final unrelated dark aspect I want to mention is this quote from Olivia after defeating the missile-launching Gatling gun-colored pencils. She says, quote, "Aw, he was a bad guy, but his art was pretty good. Whoa, that's a real doozy to think about," unquote. Beyond its obvious primary meaning, this can also be interpreted as having real-world connotations, like many other lines of dialogue in this series. There are quite a number of people in the fandom that think this is referring to Hitler specifically, but I think it's just contributing to the separate the art from the artist discussion that is especially relevant with certain internet personalities and creators of today. In the next video, I'll be exploring this game's ending and the character sacrifices that come with it. Death as a topic will be at the forefront, including the shocking ways in which this game handles it. A certain Bob-omb is going to take the spotlight in one of the most mature moments of Mario's history. Stay tuned, and I'll see you then.
Let's go! Okie dokie. Mamma mia!